Look up at the ceiling over your head. Now look down at the veins in your wrist. There is one single element sitting in both of those places, and in the steel of every car, in every driveway, and in every knife, every skyscraper, every ship on Earth. It is the most ordinary substance our whole species makes. It is also, out in the dark of deep space, a stone-cold killer of entire stars. And that is the most metal fact in all of science, which I mean as literally as those words can be meant. Every star you have ever seen burning in the night is a war. Gravity is trying to crush the thing into nothing, squeezing inward with a force you cannot even picture. And the nuclear furnace roaring in its core is blasting straight back outward, throwing off enough raw energy to hold that unimaginable weight at bay. For millions of years, the star fuses light elements into heavier ones, and every rung of that ladder pays out energy that keeps the war balanced. And then, one day, the core starts to fuse iron, and the war is over in less than a single second, because iron is the one element where the whole bargain breaks. Fusing iron does not pay energy back out, it swallows energy instead. The furnace dies in an instant, gravity wins everything all at once, and the outer shell of the star, a weight millions of times heavier than our entire planet, comes crashing down at a serious fraction of the speed of light, smashes into that cold, dead iron core, and rebounds outward in a supernova. One of the most violent events in the whole universe. Iron is where stars go to die. And now, the part that should raise the hair on the back of your neck. Every atom of iron that exists anywhere at all was born in a moment exactly like that one. The iron holding up your city. The iron in the sword of every soldier who ever bled. The iron in the blood moving through your own heart right now as you listen to this. All of it was forged inside a dying star and flung across the galaxy by the explosion that tore that star apart. You are walking around quietly, completely full of dead star shrapnel. So come back down to Earth, where for thousands of years human beings could not make iron at all. They had no idea how, which means the only iron any of them ever laid eyes on came from the exact same place it comes from, out in space, the sky. Before anyone on the planet knew how to pull iron out of rock, the only source that existed anywhere was meteorites, chunks of the stuff that survived the burning fall and buried themselves in the dirt. And it was so rare, so strange, so obviously not of this world, that people treated it as more valuable than gold, a material fit for gods and kings and absolutely no one else. When the archaeologist Howard Carter cracked open the sealed tomb of the boy pharaoh Tutankhamun, there was a dagger strapped to the mummy's thigh with a golden handle and a blade of pale, silvery metal that had barely rusted in 3,300 years. Modern X-ray analysis put the question to bed completely. That blade was cut from a meteorite. Its chemistry matched iron that had fallen out of the sky. Almost certainly a gift passed from one royal house to another and handed down like the family treasure it was. The Egyptians even had a specific written word for the metal, and translated, it means, beautifully, iron of the sky. And it runs deeper than Egypt. The word iron itself, chased all the way back through thousands of years of language, grows out of an ancient root that meant holy. Long before it was cheap, long before it was common, iron was the holy metal, a gift that fell from heaven. So how does the sacred metal from the sky turn into common dirt? Through the end of the world. Around 1200 years before Christ, the entire connected Bronze Age, a glittering web of kingdoms that traded with one another across thousands of miles, violently fell apart all at once. Drought, famine, earthquakes, waves of mysterious raiders coming in off the sea that historians still argue about to this day, and the long trade routes that carried tin, the rare ingredient you absolutely needed to make bronze, were cut clean through. No tin meant no bronze. So people did the only thing left to do. They turned, out of pure desperation, to the ugly, rust-prone metal lying in the ground beneath their own feet. And the twist that almost nobody sees coming? Early iron was worse than bronze. It was softer. It was uglier. It rusted the moment you looked at it. The Iron Age did not begin because iron won. It began as a downgrade, humanity settling for the lesser metal because the better one had simply run out. And then came the accident that quietly rewrote the entire future of the human race. Smiths noticed that if you heat iron in a charcoal fire over and over again, The metal secretly drinks in carbon from the flames, and if you grab it while it is still glowing and plunge it into cold water, it comes out changed, harder and sharper than bronze had ever dreamed of being. They had stumbled, completely by accident, into making steel, and because iron ore is lying around almost everywhere on Earth, unlike rare and faraway tin, suddenly it was not just the rich who could arm themselves, anybody could. The old world, where a tiny elite hoarded the metal and therefore ruled everything and everyone, cracked straight down the middle. Iron put a sharp edge into the hands of the many, and the age of the giant army was born. The first people to grab that idea with both hands were the Assyrians, and they used iron to build what a lot of historians will tell you was the first professional army in all of human history. Think about what an army even was before this. It was farmers, men who could only fight in the thin sliver of time between planting the crops and bringing in the harvest, because if they missed that harvest, everybody starved. Then, a ruthless king named Tiglath-Pileser did something brand new. He built a permanent, full-time, year-round standing army. And to arm a force that could swell past 100,000 men, he needed a metal that was cheap, everywhere, and lethal. There was only one possible answer, and it was iron. His soldiers carried standardized iron spears, iron swords, and iron daggers, stamped out almost like a factory line. And they built something out of a nightmare, the iron battering ram, a wheeled tower tipped with a broad iron blade, rocked back and forth to lever the massive stone blocks of a city wall apart right at the seams. The Assyrians took conquest itself and turned it into an industry that ran on terror and iron, and they swallowed everything from the mountains of Iran all the way to the very doorstep of Egypt. And this is the point where the story detonates across the whole planet. Because people in completely different corners of the world cracked iron entirely on their own, and every single one of them pulled off something the others could not. In China, they leapt more than 1,000 years ahead of Europe. While Europeans were still sweating in front of furnaces that could only cough up a spongy lump of iron, you then had to hammer for hours just to make it useful. Chinese metalworkers had already invented the blast furnace. Roughly 2,500 years ago, they got their furnaces so screamingly hot that the iron simply melted, turned to liquid, and could be poured straight into molds like water, mass-producing pots and tools and weapons on a truly industrial scale while the rest of the world was still banging away by hand. Meanwhile, far to the south, across sub-Saharan Africa, many cultures appear to have skipped bronze completely and invented iron all on their own, and the results are stunning. The Ufipa people, in what is now Tanzania, built tall furnaces that forced blasts of superheated air into the burn and produced high-grade steel in one single continuous process, something Europe would not manage for many hundreds of years. Iron tools let whole communities clear thick forest and spread across the continent, and the blacksmith became something close to a sorcerer, a person who could command earth and fire at the very same time. And in India, they forged the finest steel of the entire ancient world, a legendary material called wootz, by sealing iron and certain leaves inside clay pots and baking them for days on end. Indian smiths made steel with a rippling, watery pattern shimmering across its surface, so sharp and so tough that when it was later worked into the famous Damascus blades, European smiths could not copy it for the better part of 2,000 years and simply, quietly assumed it was magic. In old Persia, a clean killing sword stroke actually had a name. They called it, quite simply, giving an Indian answer. Iron was so magical, so completely world-altering, that almost every culture on Earth took the blacksmith and turned him into a myth. The Greeks had Hephaestus, the lame smith god, hurled out of heaven, who hammered out the armor of the gods and forged the very thunderbolts that Zeus would throw. Norse legend gave us Waylon, a master smith who was crippled and imprisoned by a greedy king, and who took his revenge by murdering the king's young sons, turning their skulls into drinking cups he handed to the unsuspecting father, and then forging himself a pair of mechanical wings and flying straight out of his prison to freedom. And in West Africa, the Yoruba honor Ogun, a god who does not merely work iron, but who is iron, the one who cut the very first path into the untamed forest with an iron blade so that human civilization could even begin, and whose followers, right up to this day, swear their most sacred and binding oaths, even standing inside a modern courtroom, by kissing a piece of iron. Then iron went and built the entire modern world, and in a pattern so cruel, it is almost hard to believe, it destroyed the very men who set it loose. For centuries, making iron was choked by one single bottleneck. It took gigantic forests of charcoal to feed the furnaces, and you can only cut down so many trees. Then, in 1709, an Englishman worked out how to run a furnace on coke, which is just baked coal, instead of wood, and the doors blew clean off their hinges. That one trick handed us the Industrial Revolution, and 70 years later, the world's first bridge built entirely out of iron. But look at what happened to the geniuses who made it possible. A man named Henry Court invented the process that let Britain mass-produce good iron for its navy and its exploding railways, quadrupling the entire nation's output. But his partner's father had secretly bankrolled the whole venture with a fortune, around £27,000, embezzled straight out of the Royal Navy's own accounts. When the theft came to light, the government seized Court's patents to claw the stolen money back, and the man who had armed the British Empire died, broke, and forgotten. And then, unbelievably, it happened all over again just one generation later. When Henry Bessemer invented the converter that finally made cheap steel possible, the steel it produced kept violently shattering, until a brilliant Scottish metalworker named Robert Mouchet found the exact chemical fix that made the whole thing hold together. And then Mouchet forgot to pay the tiny fee to renew his patent, lost the rights to his own history-changing discovery, and collapsed into total ruin, surviving only because Bessemer, gnawed half to death by guilt, quietly paid the man a pension for the rest of his life. The two minds whose ideas raised every skyscraper and floated every ocean liner both ended their lives with nothing. Iron made empires unspeakably rich, and it made its own inventors dirt poor. And so we land in the present, and the full, dizzying flip of this entire story finally snaps into focus. The holy metal from the sky. The substance once weighed out against gold and buried on the thigh of a pharaoh. It is now, today, the single most common, cheapest, most throwaway material that the human race produces. We tear roughly 2.5 billion tons of iron ore out of the ground every single year. In a country like the United States, around 3/4 of all the steel in use is nothing but old scrap, melted down and born again. Because iron has become so cheap that we treat it as basically disposable. The iron of the sky is now your rebar, your paper clips, your soup cans, the shopping cart with the one wobbly wheel. The most sacred material on the ancient planet became the most forgettable one on the modern planet, and the hunt is still on the move. One of the biggest mining projects anywhere on Earth just started shipping ore out of the mountains of Guinea in West Africa, quietly rebuilding an entire nation's economy around the very same metal that once fell as a gift from the gods. And that lands us right here, in the present, where iron turns around and shows us one last face. And it is not a comforting one. Making iron the old way, by burning coal to rip the oxygen out of the ore, pumps out somewhere between 7 and 11% of all the industrial carbon dioxide on the entire planet. Read that again? The metal that holds up our whole civilization has quietly become, just through the simple act of being made, one of the single largest threats to the climate of the only world we have got. So there is a frantic race on right now to forge iron cleanly, using hydrogen in the place of coal, in a process whose only exhaust is plain water vapor. Sweden is building the first large-scale green steel plant on the planet. Europe just passed a law that taxes dirty imported steel right at its border. And some believe the whole future of this ancient craft will move to sun-drenched Africa, where the furnaces could one day run on nothing but sunlight and wind. 5,000 years after we first clawed it out of the dirt in sheer desperation, we are scrambling to invent iron all over again. But before you go, sit with what iron actually is, because that is the real story. And it has been hiding in plain sight this entire time. We have watched this one element flip from one extreme to its exact opposite over and over. It is the killer of stars, and it is the stuff of paper clips. It was the holiest treasure on the planet, and it is the cheapest thing we make. It is the plow that feeds the world, and it is the blade that has slaughtered it. And at the very end, every one of those flips collapses down into a single dark truth. There is one thing iron has never, not for one single chapter of this whole story, stopped being a killer. It killed stars in the cold and the dark. We dragged it up out of the ground, and it killed human beings by the millions, as spears and swords and battering rams and rifles. And now, in a warming world, the simple act of making the iron that props up everything we have ever built is quietly poisoning the air of the only home we will ever have. The element that ends stars is now helping to overheat the Earth. From an exploding star, to a pharaoh's sacred blade, to a soldier's sword, to the smokestack that might undo us all, iron was never just a metal. It has always been the thing that builds worlds, and the thing that ends them. And 5,000 years in, it still has not told us which one it plans to do to us.